Another episode of Ramble Source, and I'm on with an attack from Tackett.
That opening graphic never ceases to amaze me.
You love that intro, huh?
Yeah, man, it's like throwback to like 1960s acid trip.
Man, you know what it is I kind of analyzed it after you talked about it. I was like, you know what? Really, what I feel like it is it takes the comic book aspect of, that was so big when we were coming of age, and infuses it into the sort of the animated versions of the comic books, and then puts a little R&B, a little rap beat in there. I don't know. What do you think? I don't know. 60s, I don't get the 60s action.
I don't know. I mean, play it again. I'll tell you what I think. Let's talk about that the whole episode.
We can just. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Here it is.
But here we are on Ramble Source. Can we do the thing that I like to do with all my guests, and that is the simultaneous sigh? Are you ready for the simultaneous sigh?
Try to do it this time. Last time I got nervous.
You got nervous.
Intimidated me. Okay.
All right. So let's blow out all our breath. Every little single breath.
Yeah.
Take a giant breath. The biggest breath you've ever taken. Hold it.
Oh. Okay. Oh.
And then sigh. You don't breathe enough. I can tell.
Oh, no. I feel so centered right now. I feel like I'm like at the middle of the universe. Thank you. Thank you for making
Tackett.
I almost fell asleep.
Stuff of legends. How have you been, my good sir?
Yeah, I'm nicely. This isn't going to be as thought-provoking and intellectual as your conversations with your dad. I don't have that ability. Sorry.
Well, when people come to David Tackett, they're not coming for grounded advice. They're coming for the flair. There's always that one bard or wizard who has something up their sleeves. It's the guy you're not expecting to save the day, but he saves it with a fury of fireworks. That, my friends, is David Tackett. Can you?
Woo! Thanks for the mad props.
Well, so here's the thing. You asked me earlier. You said Joe Rogan, he interviews people, based on one particular thing that they're good at, or one particular thing, right? It usually has to do with them. And, we've talked a little bit about you and your stories. What I really want to get down to, and maybe I should open up my new line of questioning with you. Maybe not, but I'm going to go for it. What do you think about when you wake up?
Everything that went wrong yesterday, I guess.
Don't guess.
I wake up and I'm like, whew. I was just talking about this with my dad.
Tell me more.
Oh, he says he wakes up in the morning. He's like, man, I got a few minutes where I'm not getting yelled at. So, I mean, I guess I'm not in that place yet. Maybe that's like maybe add 20 years. But what do you wake up thinking about?
That's why I asked the question. I mean, I ask all these questions, not because, a wise man doesn't ask a question. Actually, no, let me rephrase that. A wise man asks a question he knows the answers to. I, on the other hand, ask questions because I'm a foolish man. I need answers, man. I come to you earlier asking about purpose and 5 core sermons, but at this point I'm wondering, what do my friends, what do the men who I know, what do they think about when they wake up? I had a friend, a good friend, somebody I looked up to. He was in the military, went through a lot, and he said he challenged the men's group to wake up and say, as soon as you wake up, say "Good morning, God." And as much as I tried, well, I mean, I didn't even try. I'll be honest. There was something about it that I couldn't. There's something about it that felt irreverent to me, and I couldn't subscribe to that. But it made me think about that moment when we wake up. What, people talk about what wakes you up in the morning. I mean, my alarm wakes me up in the morning. And when I started tracking what I think about in the morning, some of it was regret. I I set up this Google Calendar, and it gives me updates on what I'm supposed to be doing. And for some reason, I don't know what brain space I was at, but I set myself up to do exercising at 6:30 in the morning, and so every day it gives me a little notification, and I even put the question mark next to like physical exercise question mark. It's like I remember, I actually quote you to many people when you talked about I remember in particular when you talked about uh, your mosquito tattoo, and I asked you about it, and you said that was a big fu for my past, my younger self, the big
Yeah.
middle finger from my younger self, and part of me thinks that my past self is up to some shenanigans with the waking up at 6:30 in the morning to exercise.
Yeah. So, man, I actually kind of let me contribute here. So back when I was a kid, I used to listen to a lot of rock and roll, a lot of Iron Maiden. I mean, real heavy stuff, man, like Sepultura. You ever listen to those guys? There's like a
Nope.
rhythm. There's a rhythm to it. It's but it's more like kind of like a beastly like yelp. It's like you know. Anyways, I guess it just like really kind of rotted my brain out. It's just like I got this idea that I just needed to live life in a way that's going to screw myself over. Is that weird? And so,
Like you
yeah,
intentionally trying to screw your future self over.
yeah, because I knew my future self wouldn't get it. That's kind of what my idea was when I was a kid. This is before I was a Christian and stuff. Yeah, it's just a self-destructive path. I think that's what the world offers, right? I mean, That's the voice of our generation was a heroin addict, Kurt
Who?
Cobain. Kurt Cobain, and his wife. Just this like totally toxic couple. Were they married? I can't remember. Or were they
Uh,
just living together? I don't even. Yeah, but that's like, My dad said before he went to Vietnam, he read Salinger. What was that? The Catcher in the Rye. He's
yeah.
this like the 1950s, you know, and he's like reading this like wild book, and it's like now he's gonna go off to war, you know. Like I think that book's about like a kid having a torrid love affair with like an older woman or something.
No, dude, The Catcher in the Rye. My dad was just talking to me about it. It's about like this older man who sits outside the rye catching these lemming-like kids who are trying to jump off a cliff.
Oh my gosh, man. Yeah, the cliff was called Vietnam.
He- well, back then,
Yeah.
but I mean, that when my dad told me that, I felt like I gotta read this book. I can
Did you
see
read
why
it?
it's a classic. No, I'm going to though.
Yeah, like I actually like I got somebody in my life who's like an alcoholic, and I've been dealing with them, and it got me thinking about William Faulkner. Right? Because I'd spent like a year looking at The Sound and the Fury, and all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden it's like some of the lines of The Sound and the Fury came back to me. I was like, dude, this guy was like a rabid drunk sitting on his porch and
Faulkner?
Yeah, Mississippi drinking mint juleps with a typewriter, just going crazy. Because I've had like three wild drunks in my life at this point. Like I've tried to help them,
Mm,
and they get into these rants, man, like these hour long, 2 hour long rants. And I was thinking that's exactly what Faulkner did in The Sound of the Fury.
mm.
And then all of a sudden I felt like kind of mad about it because I was like, dude, that's what I was reading in American Lit. Freaking guy going off on some like wild tangent about Southern history and this really critical eye of the world, and it's just a guy sitting on his porch drunk. I mean, that's the voice that's there, like the style. I mean, he takes like you go
Well,
like 10 pages and then there's a period, right? So it's just like a long like stream of consciousness, like
so
just
what was the message that pissed you off about that?
well, I mean, like when the Francis Schaeffer, the "How then shall we live" kind of thing. He had talked about how, like in the Middle Ages, if you look at art, Western art, you have depictions of the Bible. So it's like depictions as best as you can find them in the world of truth. And then it's like through the Renaissance and then the Enlightenment and these different eras, it's like they keep like reinventing what truth is to the point that we get to today. And the best truth that they can present to kids in a public high school or college, I guess, is William Faulkner and Salinger. And, you maybe on the way home, back home, you're like listening to Kurt Cobain in the car. That's the
So
truth
you heard
getting
you so the
presented.
message you're hearing loud and clear is this message of nihilistic hopelessness.
Yeah, it's the siren call, it's the siren call, the sirens on the rocks calling to as you try to journey through the world. Remember that from what was that, the Iliad?
Yeah.
Or was it the Odyssey? Yeah, he lashes himself to the mast of the boat in order to
I
try to
believe
keep
it's the
himself.
Odyssey. Yeah,
Yeah,
where they say he says put wax in your ears but leave mine open. I want to hear them. I want to experience it. But
yeah,
tie me to the mast.
yeah. That guy obviously had a problem with pornography or something. Because he's like, hey, just keep me from jumping all the way over the side of the cliff, but I want to look. I want to hear it.
I want to get a glimpse.
Yeah,
Um, but there is something about that in which. So I remember my father saying back when I was a kid, and he kept developing it over time. You know how we all develop our core ideas, core sermons. But one of the things that he kept saying was he talked about celebrities, and he said, everybody imagines sort of takes these people for righteous, replaces righteousness with celebrity, with famous, you know, because they're famous, they must be righteous. And when you take a closer look, they have one little trick that they do over and over again. They're like a
yeah,
one trick pony.
yeah,
And there's no righteousness. It's like, there's no righteousness at all to them.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good man. That's thought provoking. Yeah, I've this whole thing with Taylor Swift right now. It's
Yeah.
like she
Why is
was,
she so popular?
they come out with like three movies a year now.
Mm-hmm.
There's like three good movies like every season. I think the next one coming is Napoleon. It's coming out at Thanksgiving. So they don't really have like a stream of movies anymore. Remember when it used to be there'd be like five or six really good ones coming out. Now
Right.
it's,
They'd
oh man.
cram as many as they could into like 1 year. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're basically doing that with Taylor Swift. They're like cramming all the all the
What?
excitement into this one woman. I mean, she's supposed to be like bigger than Michael Jackson at this point.
Well, so here's my take on her. My dad asked me, and my mom and dad asked me, why is this lady so famous? And I think a good part of it has to do with the fact that she's not super glamorous. And so she's relatable, but yet she's just pretty enough. She's just witty enough. And she has a certain sustainability where she keeps reinventing her stuff to the point now where she fired her label and is re-releasing 89, or was it her album 89 back her way, which nobody's done that, right? So there's like an excitement element to her. There's a boyfriend element where she dates these, like John Mayer, and writes songs about him. Taylor Lautner, from what's the vampire show? And she writes songs about them, and she knows a good tune. I mean, when I come back to for her, she knows a really good tune. One of my, maybe one of my favorite rock and roll artists, Ryan. Uh, Ryan Adams, not Brian Adams, although I like him too. Ryan Adams, he's a younger guy who does folk tunes. He redid her whole album in his, I guess he bought it from her or whatever, or her label, and redid it. And the reason he did is because he saw something dynamic and honest in her lyrics and sweet in her tunes.
I mean, on the flip side, you have Miley Cyrus. It's like the little sister.
I hadn't even thought about her. You're right. Somebody who's sort of gone the opposite, who has a good
As
tune.
soon
She
as
knows how to, but she just totally sold out, right?
Yeah, but as soon as Taylor Swift hit $1 billion or whatever, all of a sudden Miley Cyrus came out with that "I Used to Be Young" song. She's like, "I used to be crazy because I used to be young." It's like, oh man, she's trying to become like the little Taylor Swift and get in on that cash train, I guess.
Yeah. What is it that Miley doesn't have that Taylor has? You know what I think it is? Miley never preserved a sense of mystique. When you
Maybe.
show your freaking whole body to everybody while you're on stage, you lose the mystique, you know?
Well, I mean, the thing about Taylor Swift is they still play her on the country stations, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, she was
Yeah.
like a crossover. Miley Cyrus wasn't ever a crossover. She was just kind of one genre.
Which nobody really, I mean, if you could put her in a genre, it'd just be pure pop, right?
Well, I remember back like in the '90s, it's like you'd have these pop stars and you try to get them to get some country hits so that, or you'd try to get them to jump a genre so that you'd get that audience, you know.
Yeah, you'd widen the audience. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It is sort of phenomenal. There are things I was talking to my dad today about. Um, there are certain magnets. I was talking to my friend Mike, he has Mike Elias. He's on Ramble Source every Friday. Usually, this Friday we didn't connect, but he has a video about the human the human element of magnetism, like being like magnets. Like we draw certain things, particular magnets, big or small, based on people's interest. And it is something interesting about the modern zeitgeist when somebody becomes that magnet. They when I make videos, if I don't put a good 1,000 at least views on them, nobody cares about them. If somebody goes to a video and sees 2 views, nobody's going to watch it.
Yeah.
And that's a real thing. When I go to a video and I see that it's got 0 views, what am I? I'm not going to watch that, even though it could be done by Albert Einstein. It doesn't matter. It's like no views. It's probably fake.
Yeah, I think the thing about magnetism is, I mean, everybody wants to be next to the expert, because
Mm.
like that way you maybe it'll rub off on you. I like. I mean, everyone wants the genie in the bottle to kind of give them the three wishes. So I mean, if you kind of rub up against the expert, I mean, it goes the same with books. I mean, things that sell are things that you can help you. I mean, Harry Potter. That whole series. I mean, it had like that magnetism that it was like a fun story, and maybe it was like outlawed by certain groups, so there was a little bit of like mystique to it that it's
Little
like,
taboo.
yeah, it's like, oh, it's witches, but yeah,
Mm,
but the thing is, it's like, I mean, that's kind of what the world is, right? I mean, it's like if you're famous, you got something to offer everyone. I I think it's always been like that. I mean, people always kind of like, they'll go like long ways to go listen to an important speaker or something.
yeah.
Tony Robbins. Yeah. I mean, go there for self-help, you know, try to get big in business.
Well, here's the thing. It has something to do with the has something to do with the spirit. Because if you go to it's the spirit is unmistakably present. I'm not talking about the Holy Spirit, but the carnal spirit, the regular spirit, people's spirit connecting is unmistakable at a large arena event. You go to a soccer game or definitely a wrestling match, and people will. The fun of it is joining in on the collective, entity that is the crowd, the wave, the chant. And there's something intoxicating about being part of that. Not because we're yelling at some muscular, sweaty dude in a ring, but because being part of a movement is exciting to our spirit. I believe there is something in the Imago Dei, that the way we're made in the image of God, that connects with the idea of being part of a movement. Because what is the kingdom of God if it's not a movement, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just thinking, the awakening, first great awakening back in like what, 1770s, 1780s. It was kind of like not that far off from the Salem witch trials. So you had like these two things of like mass hysteria. The thing with the awakening was, I mean, there was like a genuine, like, the country was in disorder and people were trying to people were trying to come together and find like an identity, in the colonies, in this time of turmoil, and they end up coming to God. But it's like if you read about the first awakening, like people are like having like spasms and stuff, you know, like falling over in the woods. People are getting so excited. I don't know if that's because they hadn't eaten, or they'd walk so far, or like, with their horse, get there, and it's like now they're like, ugh, having
Or
a
maybe
spasm
a
'cause they're so
real
excited.
touch of the spirit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a real touch of spirit, but I mean, on the flip side, what was that? Maybe that was the second generation of Puritans. So like their kids, they have a mass hysteria moment too, but that's like
Yeah.
burning witches, you know? And
Mm.
that was like a power structure in Salem, right? I mean, I've read things where it's like some of the people who were that were accused of being witches and stuff, that it was about land and things like this. And the people that were accused, they weren't like very like wealthy people or anything like that. But like the thing is, it's like the whole town kind of went along with it. That's the thing. You have these corrupt people in the center, and then everyone else. No one's like standing there protesting it.
Yeah,
Uh,
I,
you
I
know,
I don't know what started it, but you're right. There was a lust for a movement there, and it
yeah,
didn't
they're
matter. And sometimes I wonder, the higher the stakes, right? Wrestling, you're putting a man down, as opposed to tennis. What happened? Like the rabidness of the crowd depends on the stakes, and what higher stakes than killing a woman? Due to supernatural, whatever shenanigans. I think you're onto something there. That people were hungry to be part of, and the supernatural aspect does not go, is not irrelevant there. I do think that people are looking for something, to be a part of something, whether to quench the supernatural or be part of the supernatural. Maybe in part they felt like they were participating. You know,
Well, I mean, even if like you're just a spectator, it's kind of like you kind of giving it its a rubber stamp of approval by not like speaking up against it. But then if at that point, then they'd say, "Oh, you're a witch. Why are you defending them?" But like the thing is, it's kind of like even if you disagreed with it, it's you could have like teamed up with others that disagreed with it to try to
mm,
make put your foot down, say, "Hey, what the hell's happening here?" You know,
yeah,
what's this about?
yeah. But that's the difference between heroism and what we're talking about. This sort of mob euphoria,
Yeah, I mean,
orgasmic euphoria, is like heroism is going against that and saying, no, I am not touched by this move of the spirit. Instead, I stand. And a lot of times you can see that in people standing against religious movements, like there's a certain valor in them standing up and saying, no, this is bullshit.
yeah, there used to be this thing in Puritan preaching. It was called the Jeremiad. And basically, like Jeremiah, the prophet, was sitting there in the rubble, lamenting, right? The book of Lamentations. He's like lamenting the fall of Israel because of Israel's sin. And so the Puritans, that first generation, they had like a covenant that they made when they came over. And so they were united, and they were saying, "Hey, we're going to be the church in the new world. We're going to be a city on the hill. We're not going to be like, you know, the king of England over there, and all of his puppets who are corrupting everything." And so for like a generation, it worked out pretty good. They had the society that they wanted, and then the second generation comes, and it's like the kids, like me. I'm really connected with the story you know, my dad lived. Uh, but like it's different, right? I mean, I grew up like for me, if I was a second generation Puritan, I grew up in the church, and so I didn't have like the conversion story, and so they had to kind of do like this halfway covenant thing where it's like you had to prove different things in order to be able to participate in their society. And, it's like what like run by clerics. I can't remember what that's called. It's an oligarchy or
Yeah, yeah, an
yeah, it's like a
oligarchy or
religious
a
society. Yeah, it's like you had to be part of the church in order to be part of the government. And so,
mm,
but the thing is, it's like you had that changing of the tide, and but in that second generation, you start getting all these sermons like America's going to hell in a handbasket, and we're losing the vision. If you ever listen to some of the political commentators, they kind of do that, right? I mean, they're like, "Oh, it's
yeah,
going to hell." Like, we got to get back our hearts right with God and this and that, and that's kind of like the fever that kind of started the Great Awakening. So then it's like like you look from the second and third generation, and the third generation, it's like the country's growing, it's like things are blowing out. There's all kinds of trouble. I think that at that point they had like Native American tribes coming down and kidnapping people. Did you ever read about that from Canada and
oh,
stuff? Yeah, there's this book called The Unredeemed Captive where these French Native Americans come down and uh, like stole the governor's daughter and took her up to Canada. It was a huge, huge problem. Like getting like little Puritan towns getting raided. So you had that, and then at the same time you had more people coming in. You had more colonies. But and then the Puritans are preaching. Everyone's heart's moving away from God, and then you get like this folklore in Salem, where these girls are like, "Well, there's witches," and so it's just part of the zeitgeist. Everyone just goes along with it because I think everyone's like, well, yeah, witchcraft is a problem, you know, and just kind of like, oh yeah, yeah. Well,
yeah,
whatever they're doing down there. Probably needs to happen here too. I don't know like what the common sentiment would have been,
Well, I'm
but
sure there were. I'm sure there were like several threads that were coming together. There is
yeah,
something about young women. I mean, as my girls are maturing, there is something repugnant about, well, young men for sure, but there is something that goes unsaid. Everybody talks about the repugnancy of young men, right? Like their penchant for self destruction and what have you. But young women, there is something self righteous and selfish in which they're discovering themselves, they're discovering their beauty, they're discovering their attractiveness, makeup, and it becomes a little bit of a repugnant show of, a pompous show of self, which I wonder, that could have played into, and there's also simultaneously, right, an elderly person's, the parents' jealousy of their youth, right? You see their youth and, oh God, I wish I was young again. I wish, a reflection on our old bones and white hair and wrinkled skin. Oh, they're a witch? Yeah, they're a witch. Like I knew they couldn't have had so much going for them. There's always this repugnancy of youth. I think a little bit enhanced by selfishness.
what does
Uh,
repugnancy mean? The
like
I just
something
don't
is
understand.
repugnant is like repulsive, but not repulsive in the way that you start throwing up, but repugnant in the way that's like, I can't handle that. Oh.
Yeah, yeah, you blew my mind. I don't know what to say. Yeah, I mean, I don't have daughters. It sounds awful
Well, but
the way you described it.
it is tough, man. It is tough as they discover their. To me, the hardest thing is that they've discovered their most powerful attribute, and that is their youth. Like there's nothing more attractive, more wonderful than a youthful woman. Youthful man too, but like, and I guess what frustrates me so much is like they're, well, in particular, some of my daughters, one of them, the desire to mask it with, or to enhance it with makeup. And I don't know. I guess it's particularly repugnant or particularly gross to a father, to their father, as I as I want to see them remain innocent and young, and fledgling. And it is hard for me to see them grow up and well, honestly, the whole subject of sex is now introduced. And it was Jordan Peterson that said, when it comes to using, what we wear and using rouge, for example, in the workplace, when it comes to using rouge in the workplace, well, what is that about, anyways? Isn't that like rosé of a woman who's aroused? And it's like,
Is that your impersonation of
all right,
Jordan Peterson?
that was off the cuff. It was terrible.
Okay.
But he has a good point. It's like he mentioned that high heels are to accentuate muscular calves. Well, what what is that about? Rouge to accentuate red cheeks? Come on, red lips. rosy cheeks. Like these are not things that are accentuating valor and righteousness, right?
And well, I mean, I remember in seminary they had said it's called the code of civility, like from the Middle Ages, where you had the like veneration of Mary and stuff like that. And I was thinking code of civility, and I guess like the whole like what was that thing called in the 1800s? The whole cultural thing, like Mark Twain used to kind of bitch about. Wait, it's the Victorian era,
Oh
like
yeah.
Victorian ideals, right? I mean, what you're talking about, are you talking about like some sort of like Victorian ideal for your daughters, or are you talking about like something else?
Something else, you know, the Victorian ideals are more oriented towards men. Like the image of a man was much more, it was like the image of a refined, successful man who wore dapper suits, three-piece suits, and had a cane when he didn't even need one. And that is what Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is speaking directly to. It's like the breakout of the Victorian archetype, you know, the facade of the Victorian man encapsulated into a beast, you know, like all the opposite encapsulated into a beast where he can release his inner, I don't know, beastliness.
And just keep all the women pent up in these weird kind of like hourglass dresses.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
No, but you're right. You're right. If you look at like stuff like there
Well,
are
I mean,
yeah, other books
who
that
was
show
that
yeah
guy?
the
Well, who
extra
was that?
rouge and the you're right the
Yeah, but what was that guy? He's the one he said I kissed dating goodbye. He's like, girl, and none of the girls,
Josh Harris.
yeah, none of the girls would date you because they're like, oh, I can only date you if I'm going to get married to you. And it's like, well, I don't know what dating's for then. I mean, we should just sit here and talk.
You know he ended up I think he ended up gay or something.
Maybe. I mean, he might have abandoned his faith. I don't know.
I think he
But
did.
the thing is that, well, I mean, the thing, does that associate with what you're saying about your daughters? Just for clarification, or like some sort of, well, you're talking about the wildness of youth, you know,
I'm
desire,
talking
the
about
desire to control it.
no, I was talking about the Salem witch trials and how, like, I could see a strain of, especially, you know, if it wasn't their own children, you know, seeing a bunch of these,
Someone else's,
well, especially during the time when, you know, many of their children were dying of, you know, diseases that nobody even knew
yeah, or
existed
getting kidnapped by,
or getting kidnapped. Yeah.
yeah.
So as they see some successful, young, brilliant, beautiful woman who is like, I don't know, she's doing something charismatic. And they say, oh, no, yeah, she's a witch. She's definitely a witch. You know, I could see something like that happening. You know, a strain of that combining with all the other things that we talked about, you know, the mob mentality, the spirit of, you know, being part of a movement.
Well, it's the thing. Like, it's like, what's the movement? Like it's just a movement, just to control everything around you. When I don't know why I was listening to you. I was thinking about Anakin Skywalker. He just wanted to control the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he kind of beasted out, became Darth Vader.
Well, in Cloudburst on Thursday, what we came up with was this was something that was sort of a revelation to me. You can look back on Thursday's episode. Was that the opposite of thankfulness is control. If we're not thankful for something, thankfulness is and my dad brought this up, that thankfulness is a certain amount, is a huge amount of humble submission. Like, oh, thank you. You are responsible for my gratitude. You are responsible for my happiness right now, you know? Whereas what is the opposite of that is control. I'm responsible for every ounce of my happiness. And that reminds me a lot of Anakin. He, you know, and say what you will about the, you know, episode 1, 2, and 3, the prequels, but they did come back off into a lack of thankfulness. Like, what the heck? No, I want more, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and then, at the end, he just wants to control everything.
He
I you know,
does.
I think that's like to be generalize, I think men, I think it's like a desire to control. I think for women, it's like there's like a fear that kind of drives a lot of decisions. And maybe that's why it's like the duality, right? It's like if you're married, it's like your wife, a lot of her concerns are based on fear of this or that. And so, the guy will try to step in and try to control the situation, you know? But, that's the
Mm,
thing. It's like, how far do you take it? That to go back to the original thing, like, what do you wake up with every morning? I think that's what I wake up with. It's like a discernment that I get during the night. Because I go
mm,
to bed, I got these things weighing on me, and when I wake up, I have clarity. It's just about one thing. Like it might be a student that I interacted with, and then it's weird. I'll hold on to that until the next time I see them, and I'll give them my impression if we're just one on one, after class online.
mm.
Um, and also like things that people I may bump into at work that it's like a real problem that I have with them, or like something I couldn't figure out with one of the kids or my wife. I'll wake up with like this clarity of mind, and I think that's the key, right? It's like having discernment and maybe some
Yeah,
discretion.
yeah,
Yeah, and not just going in there with guns blazing to try to go solve the problem. Go Darth Vader to use the analogy we were just talking about.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the thing, maybe that had started a collapse in different pockets of Puritan society in the third generation. It's like they just try to start controlling it. I mean,
yeah,
maybe at its very best, like the Great Awakening was maybe them letting God control the situation, which is what their teaching and their culture actually focused on. But then it's like in that next generation, it's like the grandkids, it's like they're trying to control it, you know? I mean, if you look at American, like the last, like my parents, us, and then the kids, and the way the country's being run now. But I remember when I was young, it was let the Constitution, let freedom control it. People are going. You
mm,
have people building these mega churches, and say what you will about that. At least people are coming in. They have relationships with each other. There's like a guiding light, right? And the guiding light is freedom of religion. First Amendment, right? And then and the other amendments are all about keeping the government from coming in and basically taking away the First Amendment in various forms. That's why
yeah.
you get due process and all this other stuff. It's like keep the government off your back. But then it's like my generation, what Generation X? I think you're probably like a little closer to being a millennial, aren't you? Like,
Right on the edge. I'm still X, but yeah, I'm pretty close.
yeah, I mean, I remember that generation, 1970s, they called them the me generation and stuff.
Mm,
But I mean, I think there's something where it's like the chaos, like people wanting to start trying to control it or being okay with like the government taking more away to control situations that we saw out of control around us. And now it's like in a place where it's like both sides are like trying to control it, right? I mean, like both sides. So I have this book, The Tuttle Twins. Have you seen this book? Dude, it's American history. It's like these books for like kids. Have you
yeah,
seen them?
yeah.
Dude, they're awesome, man. I've read them a little bit in class. There was this one about the original parties. What it was? They were the Whigs and the Tories. But the book was actually talking about the conservatives and liberals in England at the founding, and both parties, liberals and conservatives, were concerned about one thing, and it was freedom, right? But like in different forms. Like the conservatives actually kind of wanted the king, but they felt like the king could like squash down like you know problems that could arise that could take away our freedom. And then the liberals, on the other hand, just wanted to relax restrictions. But in both regards, like if you're a conservative or a liberal, it was kind of centered on this idea that you should go out and live your own life. in a lot of ways. I mean, of course there were like conservatives who were like, no, the king needs to control your life, you know. But like, but when I read that, I was like, and then the chapter ends, and it's like there's this political debate going on. It's the Tuttle twins it's beautiful. It's like a beautiful little history book. Starts off, there's these two kids getting homeschooled. They got this gentle old man who kind of comes in and teaches them American history in like a fun way. So you start off with just this is life, and then they'll go and they'll start talking about like these different things like I just discussed with the
Yeah.
and then at the end it goes back to the living room or like the field where the kids are with with their teacher. And
Mm.
then all of a sudden the kids, they realize when they're looking at this presidential debate, and it was between a fictional woman and a man, and they kind of had, I think it was like the 2016 election, but the roles were flipped, where like the conservative was a woman and the man was Trump. You had Hillary Clinton and Trump in that election. And they say, both of the kids, they look at it and they say, wow, it seems like the political parties nowadays are nothing like the ones that we had at the beginning. And I was like, and that was really powerful. I was like, wow. Because I was expecting them to side with the conservatives or something, but I was like, that's true, man. Everyone just wants to control it, you know?
Yeah.
It's
Control.
no longer control your own life, you know? Like virtue. Use virtue to control your own life. And if you don't control your own life, you're going to have a community come against you. You're going to get kicked
You,
out of
you know
church.
what's you brought up the curse, and I spent a little time recently looking up the curse. And a long time ago, when I was in college, Marilee, do you remember Marilee Enns, now
Yeah.
Bradley?
Yeah.
Smart lady. She said there's something very tricky in there about the curse. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. And for the husband, cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat food from it, and from it all the days of your life. You'll be bound to toil for the rest of your life. It's like both the root of control, like a woman, and this is what Marilee says. She said the root sin of desire for a woman is to control men, and the root sin of desire for men is to control the whole world. And because they can't control the world, they disappoint their women, and because they don't desire their men, they disappoint their husbands. Like,
Wow. What was the context of her saying that? Like at a
I
meeting
don't know.
you guys had or something?
We had some deep conversations back in the day. I don't know.
Sitting there with your feet dangling off the railroad bridge in Toccoa and
No,
talking about that.
no. It wasn't at the old, not that spot. No, no. Her and I were good friends. We'd talk about things like this. But there is something in that about what you're saying about control.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it came to my mind when I said that. I mean, what you just said. I mean, it's either you control yourself, and you
Yeah.
have to do that through virtue, and you have to do it through, for somebody. There's a lot of people who just go to. I realized through COVID, there were just a lot of people that were going to church that thought it might help them, and then after COVID, they realized it wasn't. Well, maybe it wasn't the way the country was anymore, and that they no longer had to go to church, right? And they just kind of backed off. A lot of
Well, they
church
could do
tended
more
to,
good sitting on the couch.
I guess. Yeah, but the thing is, it's like that's the thing. It's even if you don't like have like a personal relationship with Jesus or something, it's like the virtue and the the Judeo-Christian worldview is there, right? I mean, there's like things that guide, like the Ten Commandments, are like, I mean, it's about like how you treat others, how you how you decide to live your life in a way that's gonna self-destruct and hurt other people. But I mean, that's gone now. But what you have is like this warped sense of virtue. When I think of like American history, I think of like Cain and Abel. You have like two people growing up in the same house. You have the liberal minded people. They grew up next to the conservative religious minded people, the Jews and the Christians in this country, and both like interacted with each other.
Yeah.
And the things that drove the Christians, I mean, in a lot of ways, the liberals like took what they wanted from that, and so you have like the progressive mind is, I mean, the virtues. I don't know that it's there. Like it's more like we're going to control your virtues because you can't do it. It's more like top down control mindset.
Yeah.
And whereas conservatives are more like kind of like I can guide my own life and make my own decisions. And they're like, well, you can't, except you're a rabid racist and you're you're destroying your kids. You're not letting them do what they need to do. So we're going to help you.
Well, and
It's more like that.
yeah, I do think that's where both parties break down, is that they're both about control. And ultimately, that is what politics is about, control. And that's the problem with it. It'll never be sanctified. It'll never be good. Politics will never be good because it is about controlling other people. And that will always be repugnant, gross, something that repels those of us who believe, well, who believe in community, who believe in self, communities guiding themselves, and who believe in a higher power, who believe in a standard put forth by a higher power. Because what happens is the government believes they are the higher power and they can control us. They know what's best for us and they can control us to do what's right. And of course, that leads to mass extermination and worse, if there is worse. But yeah,
Worse than that,
mass. Uh,
incarceration or something.
no, no.
Okay.
What do you call it? Torture, mass torture.
Whoa.
I mean, that's what they did to the Jews. It wasn't a mass extermination as much as it was a mass torture. Like, sure, the extermination was bad, but the torture that the race went through, waiting for the gas chamber, sitting in the gas chamber, sitting in the camps, that was the horror of it. Well, the killing was the horror of it. That
Yeah.
reminds me of
Yeah, for sure.
it
I mean, the
reminds me of
horror was the horror of it.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah. The McDonald, what's his name? That comedian. He died recently.
Norm Macdonald.
Norm Macdonald. He was in the car with. This is kind of a bit, that he developed, but it's good because he was a Cosby fan. Norm was, until things happened, and then so he said, you know, people talk about the worst thing was his hypocrisy. No, worst thing was the raping. That was the worst thing.
Yikes. I saw that. I saw that bit. I remember that.
Yeah, he's like, why would you say the worst thing was the hypocrisy? It's the least of those ladies' problems. That got dark. Sorry.
I mean, I don't have a follow-up question. I'm sorry. It's like,
Well, it's been a fun time with you, brother. I appreciate you. This has been I don't know, like we went deep.
it's the stuff that kind of captivates my mind because narratives and things like that because of what I do with the adult education. I'm limited on what I can say. So, and I remember at Tacoa, the whole focus of my education was to come up underneath. I remember they're training teachers that were going to go into like a communist context and like go teach under an oppressive regime as a missionary. And so it's like, how you just want to like basically my impression was you lay the foundation so that the missionaries who are out there preaching the gospel can go and there'd be a context. So what you're doing is like you're laying the context, of like a Judeo-Christian worldview. And
Hmm.
and the Judeo-Christian worldview, it's not like something that's like uh it's literally like just reason and a reliance on like truth and facts, like a critical thinking to the not like it is today. Like today, it's like be critical of everything, including being critical of everything. Like be critical, right? And maybe go out and protest if you don't understand what's going on. That's kind of like it's like a social activist kind of like reliant, but the way I was under it was you think critically so that you can reason, right?
Hmm.
Like because you're trying to lay the foundation of like
Yes,
of reason. And
because the
so
foundation is important for a building, and you're building something with your reason. You're not tearing down. You're building.
yeah, and truthfully, like a lot of cultures around the world, it's not reason based. It's other, there's other factors that kind of like guide conversations, but it's not like a like a right and wrong. And I did you ever take that there was a math class that they offered at Tacoa and it had like a lot of those like formulas where you would like work through like a reasonable argument,
Yeah,
like
critical
deducting.
reasoning.
Yeah, I can't remember. It was like it was called general math, but it was like, dude, that was a tough class, man. It was like right under like it was almost like statistics. I heard statistics was really hard, so I didn't take it.
Yeah,
Did you take it?
the lowest grade.
Yeah, the general math was my lowest grade. So the lightweight I am, I guess.
Well, no, it's neither of us are very mathematic in our approach to life. Both of us are very creative and relational, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I think like the relational thing is, I mean, when I'm working with adult students, I'm trying to, just focus on reason and logic, especially like in the things that we're studying,
Yeah.
uh, and in a lot of ways, just so that you can try to figure out like the whole premise is if you're going to take a test and you don't know how to pass the test, this is how you take the test so that you can get as
This
many
is the
points as you can.
approach.
Yeah, this is the approach. And like, okay, so if you have like four problems, it's about getting rid of the two and then it's not about taking a wild guess.
Hmm.
It's about like using instinct and different things in order to try to pinpoint the right answer so you can try to rack up the points, for GD.
Hmm.
But but in the midst of that, I use a lot of like it's like a lot of civics and things.
Hmm.
And I think to myself, I only have these students for like a week or two, sometimes, maybe longer, maybe 2 or 3 months or a year. It's like, what am I going to give them about what it means to be an American? Like something
Hmm.
where they can go out and relate to other people and maybe make a successful life, And
Yeah.
so that's why I think about literature. I think about the themes. Because I don't want to waste. I don't want to waste my time. I spent a lot of time when I was younger as a teacher, just teaching things because it was fun, or because it was interesting, or because I knew it would get the class captivated. And I still do that in a lot of ways,
What's wrong with that?
but I'm only picking stuff that I actually know is going to make an impact. Like things that like maybe you'll put a seed of something that'll point this person in the right direction.
Sorry, that bell means it's been an hour. What was that last thing you said?
Is that why you got those bells there? Just start. Gosh, we needed we needed that one a couple times. Hey, mail that to me next time. I'll have it on my
I
desk.
need you to have that. Yeah, yeah, not
Yeah,
me.
just freaking just go bow.
Well, thank you for joining me today, and I hope you can join me again, man, because these are good conversations, and I appreciate your time and your wisdom in this because there is something, and in particular, when you talk about the comparison between the Great Awakening and the what is it called, the witch hunts, right?
Yeah.
There is a ravenous thing in Americans in particular that we want to be part of a movement. I think in humans in particular, we want to be part of movements, and the kingdom of God is a movement, but it's not a movement of control. And actually, when you think about it, when I think about it, the thing that I think about is that when we are chanting something at a wrestling match or at a soccer game, we're trying to control, we're trying to be a part of what's on there, right, we're trying to control, we're trying to foist our will onto those players so that they will know the will of the people, right? What was that, like the gladiators, right? Like, and that's not revival. Revival is being part of a, like you said, it is to be part of a generative, a life giving process where we're grateful and we are submissive. We're submitting our control. But that's hard. So let's try to do that. And let's remind each other to do that, to hand over our control. And because we are cursed, you and I, with trying to control the world, the ground, the earth. It's a daunting task. But we don't have to do that. We just have to submit that and believe that we are not in control. Which is also hard, like it's like, as a man, it is my internal avarice, hunger to control it all, to make it work the way I want it to work. Even if it's just so that my wife will see me, see my control, and but in the end, we're not kings and we're not meant to be kings. God wanted us to be a generative, cooperative group under his reign. And I think we can do that.
All right, buddy. Go get yourself like a little drink, a little nightcap. Go cuddle up next to the fire. Right.
No, I'll probably cuddle up next to this guy over here. Oh,
Whoa, whoa.
oh.
Wait, what are you about to show me, man? That was
Oh.
what happened
That's
there.
awkward.
I'm glad it cut out. Maybe that's like the CIA knowing that that doesn't need to be on the internet. They intercepted this feed.
No, I was trying to show you a picture. Where are you? Nothing? Nothing yet?
I don't know, man. You
Now I'm a pumpkin.
started off the podcast saying something about you didn't have pants on or something, and now
I
it's
have
ending.
pants on. No, I was
Okay.
trying to. Let me see if I can move my computer with. Show my buddy right there. That's the
Oh,
guy.
there you
That's who I'm snuggling up with
Yeah.
tonight. Actually, he's been pining for the return of the rest of my family, and
Yeah.
he's been sleeping on the freaking table over here.
He wants the pack. He wants the pack back, you know.
Yeah, he's a pack dog. All right, well, brother, thank you.
All right.
May we speak again
You have a
soon.
graphic to go out with?
Do you want me to play the peaceful one? You like the peaceful one. All
Meditation.
right, let's go out on this. Where is it? What's it called? I'll call it maybe this. All right, goodbye. Good night.